I kept thinking to myself, this has so much value for
Hmm.
everyone. And I thought, wow, what a unique way to get a team together, having all the senses involved in an outdoor experiential learning activity with this 1,000-pound animal that you can't control really can teach some incredible skills. The horse is 100% honest all the time. The truth is, we don't get that with humans. The difference between these activities and many that people do is that it can actually have an impact on how you work back at the office when you leave here. Doing this work in groups versus individuals, I find to be 10 times exponentially more powerful. One day with a horse can change your life.
Welcome to the Differentiation podcast. My name is Michèle Sorgaroli. I am your host, and today we are being joined by Kristine Palmer. Now, Kristine is someone who notices what others miss, and she actually does something about it. She is the co-founder of OverCoffee Consulting, where she helps businesses create strategies that build visibility and attract clients. But what really lights her up is Horse and Bow, her leadership development business, where she's showing that horses reveal what meetings hide. Teams tend to arrive at Horse and Bow thinking that they're aligned, and then they try to move a horse across a field together, and they discover exactly where they're not. Through this work, Kristine facilitates behavior level corrections that emerge from experience, not from discussion. And that's part of what makes this work so meaningful for her. And Kristine, I'm really looking forward to today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And you put it into better words than I think I ever could have. I just love hearing that back from you because that's exactly what we do. And it's
Uh,
what lights me up. It's really refreshing to hear it put that way.
oh, well, you're so very welcome. It's just a treat to introduce you and have a conversation with you about this meaningful work that you're doing. I mean, the last time we spoke, just when we were getting to know each other a little bit, we talked about horses and we talked about the different role that they have. So I want to put a pin in that for the time being because I want to take us there a little bit later. But to start us off, I just went through a little bit of, your past and looked at just at your LinkedIn profile and whatnot. And I'm dying of curiosity because I noticed that you did your degree in Spanish language and literature. And then somehow after that, you ended up at Merrill Lynch in the finance industry. And then from there, you went into events and marketing and the fashion industry. Now here we find ourselves with your horse and bow practice as well, or business rather, as well as your coffee consulting and marketing. Tell us about how Spanish turned into finance and what drove you to Spanish in the first place. I'm so curious.
Oh, I am obviously just someone who's interested in a lot of different things, right? I have a
Yeah.
lot of curiosity and I really love to explore those things and keep learning. So when I was a child, I wanted to be a doctor. And I was pre-med all the way through the middle of college as I was doing science. But at that time,
Um,
getting into medical school, one of the things they said was, everybody can't just be a biology or a chemistry degree. So look at something else that you love. And on the off chance that you don't end up going to medical school or
mhm.
becoming a doctor, it would be good if you had a degree in something else. And I was like, well, I've really enjoyed learning Spanish. And I started learning when I was in seventh grade and had gone all the way through high school. And so I thought I might as well, continue on my Spanish degree. And it just meant I got to keep taking classes. So I
Yeah.
did a Spanish major along with all of the science classes and things I needed to
Oh
do to
my
go to medical
gosh.
school.
Okay.
And then lo and behold, in the middle of college, I met my husband, and he wanted to go to law school. And he wanted to go to law school in Texas. So we were up in the Chicago area
Oh,
at
wow.
Eton College. And he was like, oh no, we're moving to Texas as soon as you graduate. And Austin, Texas is where he wanted to go at UT Law. And there was
Okay.
no medical school there. And so I thought, you know what? I
Um,
also had imagined my life getting
Interesting.
married and having kids maybe after medical school. But I had met him so much earlier that I thought
Right.
to myself, maybe I'll give him the chance. He'll go to law school, I'll get a job,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll go back to medical school when he's done. Because it seemed like not only not having a medical school and a law school in the same city at that time, but also it seemed really stressful on a new marriage for us both to continue
Yeah.
graduate training that way. So
Hmm.
I thought, we'll just put a pin in that and I'll come
Hmm.
back around. That's what I still want to do when he's done with law school. And so actually through, the way that most people have made fantastic job, finds
Yeah.
today through people that you know. And
Right.
so the 1 year where he was still in school, or when I was still in school and he started working at a law firm, which was down the hall from a Merrill Lynch office. And so when I needed a job in Austin, he had made a friend at that office. They
Okay.
recommended me for the job, and I took an aptitude test, and I was, lo and behold, smart enough to do it. And so they hired me. And at the
Oh
ripe
my
old age of
gosh.
21, I was asking millionaires, grandparents,
Yeah.
to help manage their money. And it was a wonderful first career that got us through law school. And by the time he was done with law school, I wanted babies. So
Oh
we
my
went
gosh.
on maternity leave and started our family instead.
Different, yeah, it changes. You said curiosity served that. So it sounds like you just kind of follow the breadcrumbs a little bit. Does that accurately describe how?
Absolutely. Yeah. I kind of get bored with the same old thing. So once I've learned something, and I actually noticed that as I was starting to prepare for the MCAT, my junior year of college, I was like, I don't like studying this
Oh,
anymore.
interesting.
Like it's really a lot. It's overwhelming. There's so much detail. And it was just something I had kind of enjoyed what I had done up to that point, but I didn't really want to do any more of. And then I found it's kind of a similar thing when I got to the end of 5 years at Merrill Lynch. I was like, I've kind of been there, done that with this. I
Mm-hmm.
want to learn about something new. So I went back and got my MBA and started
Okay.
studying some, business material, just thinking about, starting my own business. What could I do as a mom, to keep my foot in the
Okay.
door and working, but at the same time, not, maybe run my own business so I wouldn't have to clock in every day with the same, 40-hour work week. So
Mm-hmm.
I do follow the breadcrumbs, just kind of where the
Yeah.
next interest leads me and just see where it takes me because I find that to be a lot of fun. Today, a lot of people are struggling with change, right? We have a lot of uncertainty and we're
Mm-hmm.
moving through times, how many times could we say we're in unprecedented times in our lifetime, right? But it seems that's literally every couple of years there's
Yeah.
an unprecedented
Fair.
event, right? With the emergence
Mhm.
of AI right now,
Yeah.
unprecedented,
Mm-hmm.
technological advancement that's happening right now. So, but I like that. I think it's really fun to try something new and kind of out with the old and in with the new and take what serves us from what I've learned before. My son is actually 15 years old and learning about the stock market right now. And it is so fun to talk with him in the
Oh,
evenings. And he asks questions and says, I'm building this portfolio. And I'm like, I actually know a thing or two about that from 25 years ago.
right. Oh
you
my
know,
gosh. So fun and curiosity for you seem to go together.
for sure. For sure. I find change fun and I find being curious and learning new things fun.
What's fun about change? That's a curious thing because a lot of people would perhaps disagree with that statement.
Sure.
Change is not
Sure.
fun. For you, what's fun about change?
That's a good question. I like variety. I just don't like things to always be the same. I like consistency in certain areas, but I just really like learning about new things.
What is it about variety that is intriguing to you? What is it?
Hmm.
How does it serve you? I'm curious. It's my turn now.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking through this. What is it about variety? I think it might be the unknown, the what if. Like, what is the opportunity here? Because it's something new to discover that might be better. And it's not to say that I'm not content or, from horses, I learned the grass is greener on the other side. They really believe that. I have several, I can picture it right now. One of my horses leaning over the fence and almost knocking the whole thing down, stretching for the exact same grass on the
That's
other side of
so
the fence.
funny.
But I think there is an element of that to me that I'm just curious to see what else could it be? What more could it be? Could this be better? And even if it's not better, maybe it just satisfies the knowing that that's not better and that I can stick with where I am, and what's going on.
Was that, thank you. So something like what if, what else, what more, what could be better, opportunity to discover. Was this something that started in your childhood? Like, have you always been like this, or do you think this was something nurtured in you?
That's a really good question. I think I don't remember a time in my childhood when I was very curious like this. I've always been a good student. I've always enjoyed school. I have enjoyed traveling, going to summer camp and exploring
Mm,
new things. So I think it is definitely a part of my personality that was always there.
uh-huh.
Um, when it comes to like, you mentioned earlier about like solving complex
Mm-hmm.
problems,
Mm-hmm.
that was highlighted to me by someone else. And so that was in my MBA program. One of my professors pulled me aside at the end of a problem solving classes. It was like a case study on business problems. And he said, you think differently than everybody else. I was always interested to read your papers because you always saw things in a different way. And so maybe that is something that's just kind of always been there, um, that I just want to explore it from several angles, think
Mm.
about things in new ways, because there's the obvious of is right in front of you, but it's never that simple. Things are just always more nuanced. I really don't think there's as much black and white as some of us wish there would be. And I definitely have not always been so flexible or adaptable. That I've learned through horses and through some other life experiences
Okay.
that, I love to be in control to win. There's a lot of things like that I would love for it to be simple and easy.
Oh,
Just
interesting.
I guess I've just learned to accept that it just isn't always, and we have to live a little more open and flexible and interested in, what this new learning can bring us.
Mm-hmm. Interesting to me that you talked about school, you love learning,
Mhm.
and then you talked about summer camp, like being exposed to new things is what I heard. I think that's what you
Yes.
said, something like
Yeah.
that. So there was learning and being exposed to new things, and that combination, I would think, would have been really powerful for you at a young age because
Sure.
you already had that orientation. It's interesting how we, when we love, when to what I'm hearing that I think is curious is when we think about learning, a lot of people associate learning in school because, of course, that's how we learn about learning when we're kids. We love learning new things. And a lot of us will think about typically either sports or school as those channels for learning that will either foster our desire to, our skill set or our nature for learning or our relationship with learning, if you will. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Hmm.
Um, and then you've got your summer camp, which is exposing you to new things. So you already had this love of learning that was a positive experience for you, obviously, and then this new things. Then you go into your MBA, and your prof says you think differently. And what you spoke about when you were defining differently from your perspective, or at least as I understood it to be, you talked about looking at things from several angles. Things are never quite that simple. There's complexity to it. It's more nuanced than that. Um, Tell us a little bit about what was it, do you think, specifically when your prof said you think differently? What do you think he was really calling out in you as a talent?
Ooh, what was he really calling out? I never would have thought about this before, but now that you're asking that question, I think it is a leadership skill, like leading people, because what he followed on to say was, I'm really curious about what you're going to do with your degree. Like, what are you going to do next? And what job were you hoping to have when you got this? And he said, because it was a little bit rude, actually. He said, because honestly, you're too old to go work your way up at some big company, but I see you in a C-level position. And so I think you should consider startups where you can lend this skill of problem solving and seeing things differently and help propel them forward in a way that happens at agile. Like small companies have to be agile and have the ability to be agile in much larger systems. As a company grows, you lose some of that ability. And so I think he was calling out just a leadership skill of saying, you know, there's value here to what something you may not have seen, a valuable skill that you have to help other people move through times of change or complex
Yeah.
situations or solve problems that just keep holding somebody back.
That's super interesting. So he essentially offered you a vision
Mhm.
for how your strengths could be applied
Yeah.
uniquely for you, right? Did you share that same vision with him at that time, or was that something that was a seed that was planted for you?
Absolutely a seed that was planted. I mean, if you think about the different things I had done, I had actually, I think probably I missed in my LinkedIn bio that I sold real estate for a year in college. I got my real estate license in Illinois before moving. Then I moved on to be a salesperson essentially at Merrill Lynch, right? As a wealth manager, you're building your
Yeah.
own. And then the fashion thing was a business development role. So I had already, I guess, a seed of entrepreneurialness in me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had had
Mm-hmm.
some of those kinds of experiences, but I had support of
Mm-hmm.
a big system behind me, established companies at that time. I hadn't really dipped my toe into the startup world and understood what it looks like to be part of like a 2 or 3 person team or a solo founder,
Right.
like doing your own thing. It's a completely different ballgame.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that I do think I had not visioned that for myself, and I didn't even know what that meant. And then literally it led me into my first startup. So within a few months of that,
Tell us more. What do you mean when you say it led me into my first startup?
I started looking for startup opportunities.
Ah,
And so I recall, I don't know how I got connected, but being connected with a first true like startup founder and having an experience in a sports tech startup for just a limited amount of time. And then I created my own product and launched it and even pitched it to QVC, which I don't think is on my
nice.
LinkedIn either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, just came up with something and decided to give it a go. And that led me to the event rental startup doing marketing because I was putting myself out there and trying something new and demonstrated to that founder that I would be a valuable asset on the marketing side of her organization. So, which was an organization of two, the two of us,
Right. Interesting. Oh,
and
okay. This is curious. So I'm going to take you back just a wee bit because your prof offered this vision and he seeded something for you that resonated, I'm hearing, because then you said you started looking for startup opportunities. So there was something about what he said that landed for you. And I'm curious, again, what I want to better understand is what allowed you to hear that different vision for yourself? What allowed that to resonate for you, do you think, in terms of how you were thinking or what you were open to?
that's a great question. I wonder if it was just what we hit on earlier of the curiosity, the openness, the interest in learning about this new way, because I had established that I didn't want to be in a sales role anymore. I had recognized through my experiences at the first couple of companies that I had kind of been there, done that. I understood what it meant to have
Mm,
a quota and to have to grow every quarter and to feel
right.
pressure from that. And even the lifestyle, now at this time, finishing my MBA, I think I had a 3 and a 5-year-old. And so I had done it through their childhood. They were about
Right.
to be in school, but I didn't really want them to have a nanny in the summers.
Mm-hmm.
I utilize that kind of help, at various levels over time, but I didn't want to go back to
Mm,
a big company in a full-time role. I didn't want
mm-hmm.
to entertain clients in the evening with drinks and dinner. I didn't want to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to. So I think it did spark oh, is this another way? Because when you're involved in something like a startup, where it can be fast and furious. There can also be a little more, I have to really caveat this, a little more life balance because you can choose how hard you push this startup forward. The
Mm-hmm.
expectations aren't put on you by someone else, they're put on you by
Right.
yourself, and whoever you choose to collaborate with. But,
Mm-hmm.
everything that I have done has been bootstrapped. So there's never been funding. There's never
Mm-hmm.
been, this board of directors or shareholders or group that is has expectations on me. I push myself hard enough. I never needed that pressure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what I heard you asking again, it's coming back to, is there another way? And
Mm,
being open to that, is there another way? Is there something, this is the possibility question again, right?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
there, is it better? Is it easier? Is it faster? Is it more? What way can we do this that makes it somehow better? For you, when you're thinking about better, is there a better way or is there a way to do this differently, which inherently has improvement in it?
Correct.
What does better mean for you specifically that's meaningful? If something is better, what is meaningful about the better in terms of how you're framing it?
So in the case of the major startup, Reventals, the event rental platform that I worked with, the co-founder and I both were moms. We both wanted to have it all, which we had been promised we could do at that time, right? We wanted to be serious businesswomen leading a
Oh,
big company, and we wanted to be present at our children's sports activities and school
yeah.
events, right? And so I did not see the corporate lifestyle being good for me as a mom. And my husband at this point, is growing his law practice, right? So
Right.
he's coming up the ranks of a law firm and entering partnership. And so he's already busy enough. He's already
Yeah.
traveling enough. And what I did not envision as good, and so where I looked for the opportunity for it to be better, was having two parents who were so busy that we weren't present for our kids, or where I felt pulled in too many directions, right?
Mm,
I wanted, and maybe it comes back to my lack of flexibility at that time in my life, my desire for control.
right.
Like, I'm going to at least be able to control my schedule. I want to keep building
Mm,
my skills. I want to use the brain that I have, and the knowledge, and all the time that I've invested in learning. I do want to contribute to something meaningful and bigger than being
hmm
at home. Not that that is not a great role to play, because it's really important. And that was the struggle I was having, was, can I give equal value to being at home and be present and be there for my children
Right.
and my spouse who worked in a demanding job, and fulfill this need, this kind of internal drive to build something and be part of something meaningful that was outside of my family. It's
Right.
interesting, right? It's kind of the challenge of many
hmm
women
hmm
today,
hmm
who really just, they don't want to give anything up. They want
hmm
it all, and they
hmm
want to find. So I think, as I defined better, it was just, how can it best fit my values? How can my job
Yeah.
fit my values?
That's the key here is as you're defining this tension or identifying the tension between mom and business, if you will, and being a high performer essentially in both
Sure.
categories, right? In the
Mhm.
wholeness of your life, values came down to what helped you in the design, the nuance of your unique design. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about more about that? Like, were you aware of values work at that time? Was it that present for you, or where did that, how did that come into the picture for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That came in my MBA program.
Okay.
We read several books related to company values and mission statements. And then, as I grew in my entrepreneurial journey and started various businesses, a big part of it was always, what are we trying to accomplish here? And what are we not willing to sacrifice in order to get there? I read a book by Wayne, I think it's Wayne Dwyer or Dyer.
Dire. Mm-hmm.
Fire
Mm-hmm.
Values Inc., right? And I remember reading that on a plane and underlining all of the different values that were meaningful to me. He went through the different values in each chapter, and some of them really mattered to me. I should pull it out. I have it on my bookshelf, and
Ah, yeah.
see what those were back then. And I think things probably have shifted a little bit. As I've experienced more, some things have come to be more important, and probably some have come to be a little bit less. But absolutely, even in that first startup, my co-founder had very similar values to me. And in my current marketing work, the co-founder that I have in OverCoffee Consulting has very
Mm-hmm.
similar values to me about the way we live our lives, what's important to us. And we have talked about it often. In a partnership, it's really challenging. Small teams, you have to be very aligned. So coming back
Mm-hmm.
to the team building stuff and alignment for
Yeah.
teams, if you are in a small executive team or in a small company and you just don't see things the same way, it's not that you have to see it exactly the same. I should, again, nuance that,
Mm-hmm.
but have similar beliefs and values. It's really hard, because you'll see one founder working really, really hard in all hours, and they think they're sacrificing for the good of the team,
Mm-hmm.
and the other's saying, but I'm clocking out at 5 because I'm going to my kid's basketball game.
Right.
So it's really, really important. And I feel so blessed to have had the partners and teams that I've had, because, and maybe that's what drew us together, was that we did have aligned values.
Mm-hmm. Something you really pointed out there is you talked about nuances. You brought that back, and I'm hearing nuances in values. I'm also hearing how those how you leaned into those nuances to identify alignment. I'm hearing that. The thing
Mhm.
that stood out for me most in this conversation was just now. It was about the size of your teams and how because they were small, misalignments and alignments were much more pronounced because they were small. There wasn't
Yeah.
as much room, right? I was envisioning, so when you get into really large corporate settings, things can get lost in the largeness of it, right?
Mhm.
These little nuances aren't necessarily as pronounced. So I
Mhm.
would imagine that is that something you agree with? That's just
I
kind of where
would
I'm.
Yeah, I would generally agree, but what I would encourage anyone in that situation to deal with or to
Mm,
consider is finding that best friend,
hmm.
like that
Yeah,
work
yeah,
best friend. Or even within large organizations, you're going to come down to smaller teams. And so even an executive team, for instance, might have 18 people, but there's like three that work together in
right.
this business organization. Or even my time at Merrill Lynch, we were separated into teams. So I
Yeah.
was sales for the first part and I moved into service for the second part of my career there. And I helped with small teams. So
Right.
supported two advisors here and one advisor here. And I had a
Yeah.
coworker who was on the other side of the cubicle from me, right? That I
Yeah.
talked to all day long. So you can find that
Yeah.
person in your organization. And I think it's worth the endeavor and the effort to find them because that is what helps you feel a sense of community, a sense of belonging. That
Absolutely.
there's other people who are working towards the same end goal as you, not just the business mission, but in their life goals or their, what they think they bring to the organization. So there's a lot of value in finding that smaller core group anywhere you are.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that because I think that what I was getting at here is your experience with small teams probably, I imagine, made you more aware, whether it
Mm,
was conscious or less conscious. You were certainly more aware of those nuances that are in small teams and probably made them more pronounced so that you became more alert to them as well.
yep,
Is that
for
making
sure.
sense?
Yes, and I'm thinking you're making me think back to the few endeavors as I've had several. There were some that were worse than others, better and worse. And the ones where I did not enjoy it and stick around as long, I didn't have that alignment of
Hmm.
values with the core people that I was working with,
Core
right?
people. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I feel like we've hovered around horse and bow and horses a little bit and
Sure.
leadership and team. So take us from, you've talked about some of the entrepreneurial journey, and here we find ourselves with your horse and bow business. Tell us a little bit about that business and what at first inspired it, and then go from there. We'll go from there.
Well, what first inspired it, is really the experience we had with my daughter with an autoimmune
Mm,
condition. So she was
mm,
diagnosed, maybe 7 or 8 years ago with a condition called PANS pandas. And we talk about this openly, and she's happy for me to share it as part of our story because it really
mm,
changed our lives. And so she was riding horses from a very young age. And then in 2020, everything changed. Our unprecedented times that we brought up earlier came around, and she wasn't able to take lessons because we didn't own a horse. But because of her condition, I looked into equine therapy to see if maybe she could go to therapy. If we weren't allowed to take riding lessons for fun, could she
mm,
see a doctor,
mhm,
go to a therapist?
mhm,
And I was able to do that. And I learned during that time how powerful the relationship was between horses and humans. And I didn't
mm.
understand that. She knew that all along. That was what drove her to be involved with horses. I thought it was learning a new skill and doing something fun and trying something new and getting really good at
Interesting.
something. And she was really having conversation and building relationship and trust with horses. So when I
Mm,
experienced that a little bit through her equine therapy, I said to my husband, "Oh, this girl needs a horse, and she needs it in her yard, not,
mm.
in a stable that we go visit a couple times a week. She needs
Right.
a horse friend that she takes care of
Wow.
is with all the time." So we moved
Mm.
out of Austin about 30 miles and bought a ranch property and bought two horses. Two, which was not recommended by her trainer. They were like, "Oh, no, 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 new horse people, you should not be keeping horses at home. You don't know anything."
Oh my
And I
gosh, good for
so
you.
honored her
I love it.
expertise and asked for her help because we were doing it anyways.
Oh my gosh.
I love new adventures. I love learning new things and
Hmm.
talked about it very at the beginning. Horse camp. I did summer horses at summer camp. And so
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of horse experience, but I loved horses and I had experienced them at a young age. And I thought this would be a very fun adventure. So we moved actually while my kids were at summer camp. They were at a month-long summer camp. We identified this property, sold our house, and by the time they came home, we were moving in like a week.
Oh my
Can
gosh.
you believe it? That was my best parenting move.
I would imagine that that was a bit surprising for them, a bit of adjustment.
I'm
How
so
old were they
happy.
at that time?
That was 6 years ago. So they were 9 and 11.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was a lovely, lovely time.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it. We
Yeah.
really, and my daughter loved horses, so she was thrilled to be getting horses. My son is an outdoorsman through and through, loves hunting and
Oh,
being outside and nature. He's 15 years old and takes a nightly walk to look at the
oh,
stars and
oh, wow.
listen to the sound. So he's very
Yeah.
much that old soul who connects with
Yeah.
nature and appreciates it. So they were both quite excited. And we've had
Uh-huh.
a wonderful time since we moved. But that is what led into the team building work because as I started to live and work with the horses on a regular basis, I realized I was just learning so much about myself as an individual person,
Mm.
as a mother, as a leader. It really translated so clearly for me because I see things a little bit differently and I
Mm-hmm.
see all the nuances and the different angles to look at it. I kept thinking to myself, this has so much value for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And why is it that you have to have a certain diagnosis to do equine therapy?
Mm.
Why can't someone who just wants to be a better person come out and experience something with horses and like have this experience to learn something new about themselves and discover if there's maybe a new way, a new, better
Right.
way to interact with people to get the better results, see if there's something they could try differently to enhance their relationships. And so I looked into it a little further, after studying all the pre-med things and then getting my MBA, the last thing I wanted to do was get a psychology degree,
Right.
actually go into equine therapy. But I discovered equine assisted learning, which is kind of an offshoot of that.
Okay.
And that led me to a company that certified in facilitation for work teams. And that felt so in my wheelhouse because I
Mm.
had led work teams. I had been part
Right.
very functional and dysfunctional work teams. I had, participated in a lot of leadership development and team building. And I thought, wow, what a unique way to get a team together to come, be outside, try something new, learn about themselves and each other, and go back to the office with a true experience rather than
Mm-hmm.
like reading a book is good and listening to a speaker is good, but kinetic learning is good too. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people learn more, it's stickier, they learn in different ways. And so having all the senses involved in an outdoor experiential learning activity with this 1,000-pound animal that you can't control really can teach some incredible skills.
Tell us more. What are the incredible skills? You're lighting up like a firecracker, so I
I
can see
know
it.
this is just is my jam, isn't it?
Right? So I just want to allow for you to kind of go a little further with that. What are the incredible skills that are lighting you up so much?
Yeah. So communication, we have so much nuance to our communication and we miss out on this. We are so unclear. We wear these masks. We ignore the signals that people are giving us with their body language. And with horses, you cannot do that. They don't talk. So all you can do
Mm.
is communicate through body language. Now they can learn certain words. And so we may say whoa, or we may say back, and they may respond. But it's more, even when I did that, I moved
Yeah.
forward, right? It's the energy that's coming towards them that pushes them back. So we start to learn and become aware of the parts of us that are communicating that most of us just don't pay attention to anymore.
Okay.
So huge ability to improve our communication. And nonverbal communication, the statistic changes here and there, but it's around 80% of the communication that we're giving. It's a huge portion
Yeah.
and we ignore it. So it brings this to the forefront and the awareness for people. Another
How?
big,
Go ahead. Sorry. Hmm.
I was just going to say the next thing is trust. We learn like finding a way to have deep trust that requires a lot of time spent together or experiences where you've really gotten to a place of honesty. And I find that teams coming out here and spending an entire day doing our different activities just open up in a way they haven't before. And as we ask them why they did a thing a certain way or what made them say that or experience the horses in this way,
Hmm.
you start to learn some of the backstory that you just don't find at the office. In the office context, we're about getting the job done. We're about
Yeah.
having a good persona, right? We want to have this executive presence about us. You don't really get to see beneath the surface very often. And so it's a really unique opportunity. And that seeing one another, it doesn't mean there have to be tears because a lot of corporate groups don't want tears. They want
Yeah.
to be
It's
that
true.
vulnerable.
Hmm.
But there is a new layer that can be uncovered between people. And that builds trust when you really get to see each other as we talked about with the values. when you can start to see where the values came from. It's the underlying assumptions and beliefs that are driving the behaviors. And then those behaviors, that thing that drives you crazy about Kevin
Mm-hmm.
down the hall, now you see where that came from and just the perspective he's coming from. And he
Mm-hmm.
may choose to shift that or not, but you now have an awareness about him that will help likely your interactions if you can take it into account. If you
Right.
so these are really important skills that teams need to develop with each other. And I just don't know another really great way to do that, right? You can have a speaker come in and talk about communication, but how about
Mm-hmm.
practicing communication with a nonverbal partner? You know?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, there are certainly team development or bonding opportunities where, you might go blindfolded and have to figure something
Yes.
out. Participated
Yeah.
in a few of these. How you've touched on it, but I would like you to go further and take us into the nuance of it. How is the relationship with the horse different from being in a blindfolded relationship with a coworker, for example, to complete a task?
It's a good question. I think because the horse is 100% honest all the time. The truth is we don't get that with humans. There's
Mm.
never, should I say never, rarely complete honesty between two people, right? We have our stories that we tell ourselves from the past that inform how we behave today. Last time I rose, like my voice rose,
Yeah,
X, Y, or Z happened, so I don't do that anymore. Or the last time I challenged Kevin,
right.
it didn't go well for me. So we adjust, right? And so
Hmm.
both with two people, you're always going to have that layer of protection that we're providing ourselves, right? It's a mask we wear because it has served us well, right? It is something we have learned through our experiences. So it's not wrong and it's not bad. And it's not to say that people need to change. But when
Hmm.
you have such an honest mirror and reflection that cannot behave any other way. So horses are prey animals and we are predators as humans, right? So there is a power dynamic or a interaction, that dynamic between the two of us. We have to consider that. Everything we do, the horse is just thinking, am I safe? So they're reflecting back how they feel honestly. And we then have to decide if that was a response we liked.
Hmm.
Like if we come in and try to move a horse and it runs away from us, might that have been a little too much? Or if we really think we're trying and we're saying, move over there, and it's not responding, are we really not giving it enough energy and conviction and intention
Hmm.
to communicate properly to the horse? So I just don't think we have that with humans. And a blindfolded human, sure, they have to trust you, but still, everybody's giggly, everybody's nervous, like there's
Hmm.
right? It's just not the same as the honesty that you get from a horse that cannot behave any other way than a horse. We don't train them to do these exercises. We just ask the participants to try and do something and see how they try to accomplish that with a horse.
Hmm. Interesting. So what do you notice having, a ton of team experience yourself through different channels of all your entrepreneurial ventures and whatnot? Um, what do you notice that is different in the outcomes in the work that you do at Horse and Bow?
Different from other team building
Hmm.
activities.
Hmm.
I think the experiences are more deeply embedded. I think they point when you think back to the team building that you've done before, you think about like, oh, we've done a low ropes course, right? We've crossed a shaky bridge together, or we've blindfolded, done something, or we've tried to create something with popsicle sticks, right? Do you really remember learning anything from those? Like, is there a lesson
Mm.
that you can pinpoint and say, oh, I learned that we need to do transitions differently. So, an example, we have a handoff activity in the round pen where people will stand around the edge of a round pen and the horse is on the inside, and we ask them to move the horse at liberty. So, no ropes or anything. Use their energy to move the horse from one person to another. And they have to hand the horse off. That reflects a lot of things that happen in our organizations today. Maybe a project that one team is starting and then handing off to another team, or a customer who goes through several different departments before
Hmm.
they're fully done with our company, right? Or recycled back to the beginning of sales. And teams, the last team that I had do that activity said, it does not work. This customer, they saw the horse as their customer and they were passing it from person to person. They said, this horse needs one person to follow them through. If
Right.
one person stays and introduces them either through several steps in unison, all aligned, the three of them, or one person actually takes them to each department and continues with them the whole way around the circle, that works. And so they really started thinking, do we need to change the way we're
Yeah.
passing off our customers? So it turned into actual action, not just, oh, that was a fun time. And now I know you a little bit better. We had some fun together and we solved a problem, this kind of unknown problem, like the
Hmm.
popsicle sticks. What is this? What are we building?
Right.
You know,
Right.
what does it really connect to in real life? But in these horse activities, that's a huge part of our debrief is what does this actually mean? Where do we actually see this happening in our relationships or in our organization? And
Hmm.
do we want to try something different because of it?
Hmm.
I can't believe we're coming back to this theme, but I bet you knew this is too. But like, is there a better way? Is there a
Right.
better? So this last company said, let's experiment with keeping a consistent point of contact for these customers all the way around our departments and just make sure that that person is always kind of in the loop and involved because it will help maintain the trust and
Yeah.
keep the transition smooth as they move. So
Nice.
they're just going to try it differently. And so I think the difference between these activities and many that people do is that it can actually have an impact on how you work back at the office when you leave here.
Awesome.
Hmm.
I've got 15 questions inside of that answer. I'm like, okay, where do I want to go here? Where I want to go, because there's so many little gems inside of that. Just highlighting the authentic honesty that a horse can offer as a mirror is really what I heard, whereas humans are always in a mild or emphasized battle around honesty versus protection. You had
Yeah,
that piece. I think
I
there's
love that way you phrase that.
yeah, there's constant tension there with wanting to be authentic, wanting to be honest, wanting to trust. And then there's the protection mechanism, which is part of the human dynamic. So I think that's a very interesting piece for us all to reflect on. Something that you talked about a little earlier was you made a reference to backstory, and
Mhm.
you talked with some energy that suggested it's quite important. And you talked about, beneath the surface and things that allow people to see each other. What specifically in this work around backstory is so important for this human connection that you're facilitating?
You know, I also do individual coaching out here, and I can't tell you, it's got to be in the 90% range of people just want to be seen.
Mm,
They come wanting to be understood, wanting to
right.
be heard, right? And they want to be seen for who they really are. And without a knowledge around what brought someone to be who they are today. You know, as you explore with your coaching clients, I'm
Hmm.
sure, and even more
Hmm.
exploring this conversation, the journey you've been on is what brought you to this moment and informed how you think and how you see things, how you feel about yourself and others and your interactions.
Right.
So I think it is just critical if you want to have a high performing team that trusts each other deeply, you have to know each other very well. And people want to be seen for who they really are. They just don't necessarily know if that is safe. And that is
Hmm.
the horse. The horse
Hmm.
just wants to feel safe. They want to be
Hmm.
acknowledged for who they are. They don't want outside pressures put on them if not necessary, but they'll handle them very well and very generously if it's added. And so there's just so much about the horse experience that human experience reflects. And when we can see it with our eyes and we can feel it with the energy and emotion that just happened and what everybody else saw. I haven't mentioned
Hmm.
that, like, doing this work in groups versus individuals, I find to be 10 times exponentially more powerful at the
Hmm.
exponential by the number of people that are present because the
Hmm.
witnesses to what just happened give validity to that experience. They saw it too. You know, you experience it, but somebody else saw it too. And now they know something, and you know that they know.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
laugh sometimes with the horses that part of our body communication that we learn in doing these activities is that when they give us communication with their body, we have to give communication with our body. So a flicked ear, we have to pause to show the horse that we saw that. So then he knows that we know that he
Yeah.
knows that we know.
It's
And that's
really
the dialogue that has to happen with our bodies between horses
right.
to learn to communicate.
It's so interesting. Yeah, there's, really it's speaking about communication. So, connecting, as you said, connecting to real life was a
Hmm.
phrase you used a little bit earlier. And I'm
Critical.
hearing so much of this just makes it to the point that you made embodied, right? This embodied learning that is connected to real life that allows the behavior changes to happen because
Mhm.
they're experiential. I want to just capture some of the themes and summary here because we talked about at the very beginning your love of learning and your seeking for new experiences. And you talked about the nuances, right? The nuances and the complexities and the things that make things so dynamic and interesting. I'm hearing a lot in this part of our conversation around the nuances in the dynamic around feeling and seeing and that experiential energy between people. That nuance is so complex. So I can see why, I sense why it's so important for you because that complexity is on a whole different level, right?
Yes.
And then, ultimately it's about that possibility of what is possible if this happens. So
Mm.
I'm seeing the threads of your story as they
I love
complete,
it.
come through. Does that resonate for you,
It
Kristine?
absolutely does. I think that you just articulate it so well, and it is so thoughtful to have paid attention so well through the conversation
Mm,
too and connect the dots.
thank
That's
you.
hard for me because I'm always moving on to the next thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So circling back and recognizing these threads is really helpful for understanding, again, our values, like what's
right.
important to us, and
Yeah.
making sure that we're kind of putting that at the forefront as we move into a new venture or a new learning, making sure that we're staying aligned with what's really important to us.
Lovely. Yeah. And values and alignment are a huge part of this, as you talked about. Okay. So I have one final question for, well, kind of two, all in one
Okay.
question, but two parts to it. You said that people really want to feel seen, they want to feel understood, they want to feel that they have been acknowledged, right?
Mhm.
Um, who do you want to be seen for?
Hmm. I think in the simplest form, I would say just somebody who cares. I think we feel dismissed by a lot. We feel distracted by
Mhm.
a lot of what's going on in our world. And I want to notice people. I want to notice small things. I want to notice what matters to them. It's hard for me to remember, you know,
Mhm.
but when
Mhm.
you do pay enough attention as you interact with someone to then bring something up to them later, I remember the last time we were together, your mom this or your child
Mhm.
this, and the things that are important to them, when you take the time to just log it in your brain and bring it up, that shows
Mhm.
that you care and that helps people feel seen, right? It
Yeah.
really helps them feel like they mattered and the interaction, even if it was small that you had with them, was meaningful. And I think that's all most of us want.
Yeah. That's all most of us want. The nuance there that I want to just share as we wind up is each of us wants to be seen not just for our truths, but
Mhm.
also for what we care about.
Mm.
And that's what you talked about. You said, I want to be someone, I want to be seen as someone who cares. But then you talked about what that means to you, someone who notices the small things, someone who is aware of the nuances in this relationship. And
Mhm.
as we reflect on the thing that is what you're wanting to be seen for and how you're wanting to be seen for that, or what people notice, the nuance. We notice your work with Horse and Bow,
Mm.
which is all about the nuances in
It
being
is.
seen.
Yes.
And so the work that it really brings us full circle to the work that we do
Yeah.
not only allows us to be seen for who we are, it also allows us to be seen for what we care about.
Wow. That's
So,
powerful.
mm. What would you like, as you think about and reflect on our conversation today and just who you are and what it is that you care about,
Mm.
what would you like to offer our listeners as a final gem of wisdom or piece that you'd like to finish with today?
I will just say one day with a horse can change your life. So give
Mm,
it a try.
beautiful. One day with a horse, and we know where to find it. That
That's true.
horse.
There are horses everywhere, though. Doesn't have to be with me. Just go get on a barn somewhere.
That's amazing. One day with a horse. That is beautiful. Kristine, thank you so much for sharing. For those who do want to know more about Horse and Bow or even about OverCoffee Consulting, where would they find you best?
Easy on the internet, horseandbow.com and overcoffeeconsulting.com.
All right, we'll make sure those links are there. And thank you so much for joining us for this very
Thank
rich
you, Michelle.
conversation
That's
today.
wonderful.
It's been a
Thank you.
delight. Bye for now.